Ladies and gentlemen, we have the pleasure of being joined by Charlie Nelson, who is coming to us from outside London. He is the VP of the London Bills backers, and he's the host of the podcast Bills from Afar that's already in its third year. Charlie's joining us today to obviously talk about the Bills' trip to London. We really enjoy getting a fan's perspective from the other side of the pond. Excited to get into Charlie's football journey, how he became a Bills fan, what his take is on this season, considering that he does his own podcast, and then maybe some tips and tricks and recommendations for any of our listeners that are coming over, for the London game in October. Charlie, how you doing? How this afternoon, your time?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. Great to speak to you both, and always a pleasure to speak Bills.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I reached out to you before, right after they announced the London game. Maybe we can start here. When you guys found out that the Bills were coming to London, what what was the reaction? It probably wasn't that much of a surprise. Kind of what kicked in for you guys, and maybe what your organization looks like in general.
Yeah, so we've been expecting it for a while because with the addition of the 17th game, every team eventually has to pay an international game, right? That was the whole condition of it, and so every team gives up a home game once every so many years. And the Bills hadn't been for a while. I think we were talking about it being 2015 or so. So we've been kind of expecting it for a year or two, and so it wasn't a massive surprise, but obviously huge excitement for a lot of people that are based in Europe. This will be maybe their first chance to see the Bills. I'm fortunate that I get to go and see occasionally games in the States, but for most people, it's the first opportunity to go and see Josh Allen play and Stephon Diggs and what this Bills organization has become in the last few years under McDermott and Bean. So, firstly, huge excitement. Secondly, some fear about ticketing because the challenge with getting to see games here in London is that they're so oversubscribed. These London games, and I'm not sure how obvious that is to folks in the US, but they're hugely popular. I think Pete, we've had 4 London games. There'll be 3 this year, and they sell out in a matter of minutes. So for us as Bills fans, I like to say there's no such thing as a part-time Bills fan, right? You get a lot of people turning up to London games who have, other allegiances. They follow, some other team, but they want to see live NFL, so they'll go, which means that the market for these tickets is substantial. We want to pack it out. This is a Bills home game, and we want to make sure there's as many Bills fans there as possible. And so then there's a bit of trepidation. All right, how am I going to get tickets? What are the different routes for getting tickets? And trying to get as many Bills fans as we can to the stadium. So, yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Are they on sale yet?
No, they're not. They're not.
Yeah, okay.
And there's a variety of routes. So obviously, I know that Bills season ticket holders in the US, they have an opportunity to buy tickets. I think,
Right.
And then there's secondly, it's hosted at the Spurs Stadium, which actually is an interesting point because the designers of the Spurs Stadium here are the same designers that are.
Yeah, we want to ask you about that in a little bit. So Can you tell me how many people are in the UK Bills backers, the London Bills backers? Like what does your organization look like? How many like, and then what's your estimate for Bills fans countrywide?
Yeah, so there's basically 3 different bits of Bills in the UK. We have UK Bills, which represents the whole of the Bills organization here. And then we have Bills Backers London and Bills Backers Manchester. So we have 2 physical presences where you can come to watch games with other Bills fans, locals and expats, every Sunday, providing it's not a primetime game for our time, the middle of the night. And so it's been an interesting journey. So if we turn back the clock a few years, we would only get together physically for big games, primetime games, typically in the playoffs. So we'd have one event maybe a year where we'd get together. But about 2.5 years ago, we decided we'd set up a physical presence and actually have Bills backers pubs. And it started off as we would get 10, 12 people turning up to watch a game. Now it's grown to more like 120. Wow. So it's crazy. You'd be astonished by how many Western New Yorkers actually live in London or the London area. And obviously we have a fair few locals who are also Bills fans. So the atmosphere has been building and building and building. Fans were already here. They just didn't know about us. We've been on our local broadcaster here, Sky TV. They've sent presenters down. We've had Aaron Williams come and attend our games in person. It's just grown and grown and grown. And now it's this phenomenal group of people that are just a pleasure to be with from all over the world that come together and meet on Sundays and just talk Bills and watch the games. So, yeah, it's grown incredibly over the last couple of years.
I think before we go any further with that, can you tell us how you became a Bills fan?
Yeah, sure. So I'm old enough, sadly, to remember when the UK only had 4 TV channels before cable TV, before satellite TV. NFL was broadcast every Sunday live, and the competing programs you'd have maybe a religious program, you'd have maybe the Love Boat or Battlestar Galactica or something, and every guy my age would typically have an NFL team, and it's what guys my age would do is they go in the other room and they watch the NFL. So
one station was just dedicated to Benny Hill, wasn't it?
Right, exactly, yeah, yeah, that's right.
Love him.
Oh yeah, you can't go wrong with Benny Hill. And so you'd be forced to pick a team, right? And I was at the age when I was starting to get introduced to the NFL when the Bills were good. They were also an East Coast team, which meant they were sometimes on at 6 p.m. on a Sunday for us, which was kind of convenient. And we'd have these snow games, and they obviously went to the Super Bowl, and the Bills were always the underdog. So I'm like, I'm an underdog fan. I want to go for the underdog. And, I love that Jim Kelly offense, them and Thomas and Enos Bennett. And I think the style of the Bills play was different to what everyone else was doing at that time from memory. Everything was out of shotgun, and it just was a really entertaining team with crazy fans and snow games, and that's what drew me in. And I've been committed ever since.
Wow. So you survived the entire drought.
I watched every single Super Bowl. Yeah.
Good for
in between, right?
Yeah, good for you. So tell me how it looks on a Sunday at your bar. Is it a mix of like you said, people from Western New York, people from England? What is the mix?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, London's a global city, right? So we have people from all over the world. So we'll have Australians turn up, Swedes, Norwegians, you name it, French people. And then you've got a mixture of Western New Yorkers. For some reason, we have a lot of people from Rochester. I don't know why, but Rochester seems to be kind of whether people want to leave Rochester or they just want to come or what. But we have a lot of people from Rochester. Then you have people who are passing through. These are either tourists or they're people who are in London for work. And they're suddenly amazed. Oh, they did a search and they found there's actually a Bills backers pub in London, and they'll turn up and suddenly find that they're amongst 120, rabid Bills fans. So people will turn up early. They'll get some food. They'll sit down. They'll chat. It's a very friendly group. Everybody talks to everybody. And then once the Bills get going, we do everything you'd expect. So we eat wings and we sing the Bills song. And it gets pretty lively. And we have a great relationship with the bar we have here, where they'll stay open late for certain games wherever possible. And it's just a fantastic community to be a part of.
That's great. Did you mention earlier that you had been here for some games, or?
I have, yeah. So unfortunately with my work, I travel a little bit to the States from time to time. So last year I was fortunate enough to see, I think, 4 games. I saw the Ravens game in Baltimore, which was win on a field goal.
Yep.
I saw the 2 games in Detroit, so I was in Detroit for a week.
Oh, I was there with you.
Oh, you were? Yeah.
No, obviously, I was there for the Cleveland one.
Right, so that was kind of fun. Although I realized that week is too long in Detroit. There's only so much to do. Right?
That's true.
I did intend to be in Buffalo, but obviously weather got in the way. And then I came over for the Bengals playoff game, which was not quite so much of a fun experience, but still my first experience in playoff football.
So how does it look at this bar? Maybe set the scene for me. I think people, I've watched Ted Lasso. I'm watching Welcome to Wrexham now.
Right.
How is it different, than a Saturday? Right? Yeah. Than an EPL like Saturday morning or whatever.
Yeah. So this is a really nice bar right in the center of London, and it has a ton of screens, and they'll also be showing the sports, right? So when we first turned up, we get the back area of the bar and a couple of TVs. Interestingly, when we founded it, the guy who owned it is Brit, but a big Chicago Bears fan. And he decided he wanted to host an NFL team. He was already hosting Everton, which is a soccer team in Liverpool, as their supporters club, and bizarrely Ohio State games. So on a Saturday, he would show Ohio State games. And he decided, all right, I need an NFL team. And it worked really well because the Bills, we were looking for a place. And so we started off, we had maybe 10 people turning up, got to know some folks, and as the profile raised, it just increased. Now that pub will show soccer. And you've probably seen soccer fans, right? They can be pretty rabid as well. But
are you calling it soccer just because you're on our program?
I am, exactly, yes. Okay. For your benefit entirely.
Thank you.
I don't want to get people confused.
He's Americanized, right? He comes over here often. Right. He's a smart man.
You're reading the room well. No, this is great.
Just to speed things up, just to be understood. So they will show soccer games, right? But there's a bazillion bars in London that show soccer games. And what happened was, as our Bills presence started to grow, they would then reserve a section of the pub for us, and they would have, reserved for Bills Mafia, and they would turn the soccer off and put the Bills on. Because on a Sunday evening, honestly, pubs here are pretty quiet, right? So once the soccer's finished, which will typically finish around the same time as the NFL starts, people clear out, they go home. We're bringing 100 people and more. And this bar was very happy, of course, because we started to grow their revenue, and suddenly they were getting people who were drinking and eating and giving them a community when typically it would be quiet and the place would be dead. So actually, it's really been very mutually beneficial for us. And there's a few other teams that have backers bars.
I was gonna ask you that. How many NFL teams have like a backers bar?
We're still trying to work it out. The Eagles definitely have one. The Bengals have one as well. But there's not that many. I think we're in the 5 to 6 kind of range. So,
we did a program on the schedule earlier. I would imagine you have mixed feelings about the schedule because the Bills are so good now. They're getting all these night games, and for you, that what you're talking about just can't happen at 3 a.m. or 1 a.m. whenever it is, right?
Exactly, and that's the downside, right? So when it's a 1:15 kickoff, which Monday Night Football against the Jets will be at home. There are places that do show NFL in the middle of the night, but people are having to travel, and obviously it's not quite so easy to get into London and the logistics of that, because people would rather just roll out of bed at 1 a.m. and turn the TV on and watch it from home. And we are fortunate we have something equivalent to your Sunday ticket called Game Pass, so we can watch every game live with one subscription, which is great. But yeah, when we see the 6 primetime games, it's brutal. But what I said on our podcast was, would you rather watch terrible football at a time that's convenient to you, or would you rather watch good football in the middle of the night?
Well framed.
That's a good way to put it. So an 8:15 kickoff here translates to 1:15 in the morning there.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's tough. Now, what about like a playoff game, or this? Obviously, if the Bills make the Super Bowl, that might be a different scenario where the bar might stay open.
Yeah, bars will stay open for the Super Bowl, no problem. I mean, a lot of bars will stay open for the Super Bowl. I mean, there is a big NFL following here, unless it's not obvious to you. But obviously, when it's just one-off, the bar has to apply for a special license, to be open in the middle of the night. And it's more. I don't know if you've been to London, but it's a massive city, right? It's like 10 million people live in London, and to get from one side to the other side, it takes a bit of commitment and time. So people are not going to do that at 1 a.m.
Sure. So you mentioned, it's Tottenham Hotspur, right?
That's right.
That's the Premier League team that they're playing in, and that's the stadium that the Bills, designers kind of use as the template. Can you maybe tell people what that stadium is like and kind of what we have to look forward to?
Yes, it's a fascinating stadium because it's the first purpose-built soccer and football stadium in the world, right? So it converts from one to another. So they have a grass turf field which slides under one stand, and then they zip up the turf for the NFL, and it works incredibly well for both sports. I don't know if people are familiar with Tottenham, but they're a kind of a relatively top-tier Premier League team, your top 6 type team, although they're struggling this season. So it's got a big fan base. It's about 65,000 seats, something like that. So it's not as big as the Ralph, as I like to call it, but it's a good size. Seating is fantastic. There's no bad seat in Spurs Stadium. It's about 10 minutes outside of central London on a train or a tube, so it's pretty close into the centre. It looks like a spaceship's been dropped from Mars, honestly. So it's a regular suburban area of London, and something like this astonishing stadium, which is probably one of the nicest in the country. Yeah. And for us, maybe something that people don't tend to think about, we have a big singing culture in soccer, right? So when teams are playing, every player has a song, and people will sing and sing and sing. And one of the things that helps that atmosphere is not having breaks in the seating. So one of the interesting things about Spurs is one end is just one big bank of seating, and that really helps with the atmosphere. So I would say it's probably going to be equivalent to the Cleveland game in terms of atmosphere. You mentioned you were there, whereas. All right, it wasn't all Bills fans as a home game, but there's a good chunk of Bills fans and a good chunk of other fans from the local area. I suspect it'll be similar to that.
When Josh mentioned Ted Lasso earlier, I love that program. Is that, in your opinion, like you were just describing a typical soccer game, does that program do a pretty good job of showing a realistic, or is it I don't know.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think obviously there's a little bit of artistic license taken,
Sure.
right? But
Yeah.
I mean, fans are brutal in terms of their singing and their humor, and there is no quarter given when it comes to they will pick at anything. I think that Ted Lasso is probably a little bit designed for a US audience, I would say, but
Okay.
a lot of Brits watch it and they enjoy it a lot. In fact, I was in Richmond just earlier today, so it's pretty close to me.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's good fun, and it's amazing how it's raised the profile of the game here.
What? How would you compare, going to a big English soccer match to going to the playoff game in Buffalo against the Bengals? Like, what are the similarities? What are the differences for you?
Yeah, so one of the biggest differences is tailgating. So we don't have really a concept of tailgating. People go to bars, but they won't sit in a parking lot with pickups and do barbecues and that kind of stuff. So that's one of the biggest things I enjoy when I go to Bills games is being part of that tailgate. So people have a few drinks. The biggest difference is that typically in a massive game here, people will sing the whole time. And it's just because the game flows, right? There's not the stop-start thing, so that's a big difference in terms of the atmosphere. But in terms of the liveliness, it's pretty similar. I mean, big sport is big sport, right? I think that it's obviously a lot shorter, soccer, right? Game less than 90 minutes, whereas the NFL, we were talking about 3 to 4 hours. I would say that after a big game, typically people will go to bars and go drinking and celebrate. I think that's, I guess, similar in the NFL as well. But often people are heading out. It's a Sunday night and they're heading home, right? So maybe there's a little bit less afterwards, but it's pretty similar. Big events, great atmospheres, people hyped for the game. And it's not that dissimilar.
Does the crowd sing like if you're losing?
Sometimes, yeah. Exactly.
Do the songs change?
Yeah, they do. And it becomes ironic sometimes, right?
Okay.
So I'm a big Man City fan, and for a long time, Man City were terrible, right? We were in the third tier of the English league, and it was like a gallows humor, and we would sing this ironic song once we got good. We're not really here because we couldn't believe what was happening to us, right? So people just sing different kinds of songs. But people still sing. It's a good fun experience.
Yeah. When we were there in 2015, a couple things. Our hotel was like an hour north of London at the Grove. Do you know the Grove?
Yeah,
do you know where that is?
Yeah, sure, I do. Yeah.
It was neat. It was a quaint area. It was on a golf course.
Yeah.
But it felt like, I was telling Josh, it felt like we were at training camp kind of, because we had a practice facility, which was good. I mean, I think about an NFL team now in Vegas.
Yeah, right.
Just a constant, distraction, it would seem.
Right.
Where when you're trying to, prepare to win the game, it's nice to have that bonding and serenity. But I was going to say, too, when we were there were a couple of advanced trips to London, and we had a contingent of Bills personnel that were really excited to catch a soccer game up there. They were big fans. Chris Brown was one of them from One Bills Live, and some others. But they felt privileged to be there to catch some soccer.
Oh, I mean, I've spoken to many people, many of my friends in the States who want to do that when they come over. They want to see a game and they're asking for tips and advice. What I would say is, obviously, there's the Premier League, but we have 92 professional clubs. There's a lot of professional soccer gets played in London.
92?
92, yeah. Wow. So we have a pyramid system. And at the bottom end, you may get 1,000, 2,000 fans. At the top end, you may be getting up to 60, 70,000 fans every week. But we have a pyramid system with 4 professional divisions and promotion and relegation. So if you're terrible, you get knocked down a level. But I love that.
I learned the pyramid system watching Welcome to Wrexham.
There you go.
And I absolutely love the idea that you can get banished to the league below. And I've become much more engaged with the Premier League and all. So I was going to ask you, that weekend that the Bills are there specifically, are you guys doing certain events? Are there things that you would recommend to people coming over? And I was going to say to you, is the Premier League season already started at that point?
It will be.
And if you had a choice of any venue in London or any soccer game to go to, which would you pick?
Well, that's a great question. So, firstly, Bills, UK Bills, and London Bills will be doing lots of stuff. So you'll start to see it on social media in terms of there's boat trips, bus trips, times to get together and drink. I'm personally leading a pub crawl on the Saturday before the game. So if people want to check out the sights of London and have a few beers on the way, there's going to be a fun pub crawl for Bills Mafia. There's going to be a couple of walking tours for people just want to see the sights and take pictures and be shown around by someone who lives and breathes this city. then that's also an opportunity. And those things will both be free. So there's lots to do in terms of meeting up with Bills fans from around the world. So that's the first thing. Second thing, in terms of getting to soccer games, the Premier League season will have started. That starts in August, so it'll be well underway, and you'll get to see the fixtures announced around I think it's around the middle of June. So that's when they'll start announcing the fixtures. And some of those get moved around for TV schedules and stuff, so similar to what happens in the NFL. Getting to see Premier League games is difficult unless you're a member of the club. So if people have a particular passion for a particular team, what I would suggest is get in touch with your local supporters group in the US, because often they can arrange tickets for you. So if you're a fan of a Premier League team, it's fairly likely that you have a US supporters club that you can get in contact with. If there's many, I mean, I used to work in Boston a little bit, and I remember going into an Arsenal supporters club. There was like 200 rabid Arsenal fans in there. I couldn't believe it. And they were all Americans. They were all super knowledgeable about the game, and many of them been over. That's usually the easiest way to get a Premier League ticket, is do so through your local US supporters club. If you're not bothered, or you want, let's say, a more legit experience, more of a Ted Lasso, welcome to Wrexham type experience, I would look at the level down. What we call League One. So it's professional. It's just not perhaps quite the level of Premier League, but it's much easier to get tickets. You can go on, probably get them, online from anywhere. You'll be in smaller stadiums. It'll be more raucous atmospheres. It will be, more hardcore, more legit. I was actually talking to a guy yesterday, a good friend of mine who's a Bills fan, coming over from Florida, and I said, go to QPR. So Queen's Park Rangers, it's like a 22,000 person stadium. It's a crazy atmosphere. If you get a chance to go and see that, you're right on the pitch. If you want the legit soccer experience, actually maybe that's even better than going to a Premier League game, which is more expensive ticket prices. You're going to be sat further away, and it's going to be a little bit calmer, I would guess.
Nice.
QPR was in the Premier League for a while, right, and then got
relegated.
relegated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so Don, if you're in the bottom three of the Premier League has 20 teams,
right?
And listen to me, I'm the one on the broadcast here explaining English Premier Soccer. I'm just showing off my new knowledge from watching Welcome to Wrexham. If you're in the bottom three, you get put down to like AAA baseball.
Yeah.
So your whole organization goes down. It's crazy. And then the top three from the League One will move up a year, and then you can obviously go down. And this Wrexham team was in the very lowest. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing. And Ryan Reynolds bought it, and it's an amazing documentary. We're halfway through season one, and it's really interesting to watch. It's kind of fun.
Cool.
How many people around London would you say are rabid NFL fans? Not just Bills fans.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands, if not in the millions, I would say. I mean, the tickets are oversubscribed every year. They sell out in minutes. And we're getting 3 games a year at the moment, and they'll all sell out in minutes. So if you think about Wembley's, 80, 90,000 capacity, Spurs is sort of 60, 65,000 capacity, they will sell out no time at all. This city could easily take, I would say, 6 to 8 games without a problem. And people will travel. I mean, people from Scotland, Northern Ireland, the rest of Europe will travel. I mean, obviously, the NFL's got a big fan following in Germany, so a lot of Germans will come over to watch the games here as well. Now they're getting their own games, but again, they sell it in minutes. So there's a huge appetite for it.
Is Jacksonville, I know they've been kind of designated as England's team. Will there be a lot of Jags fans there, or is that kind of just in name only?
So it's a really good question. I think there are people here that may have grown up supporting one team, and they've come to the conclusion, I can never see that team I support. I could go and see the Jags once a year. And so some of them have actually shifted over to the Jags. Yeah. I wouldn't say the Jags have a rabid fan base. It's not the equivalent, I would say, in terms of the Bills or the Cowboys or the Giants, the Packers. These are much more, I'd say, long-term committed fan bases from my perspective. I think also the fact that the Jags is an expansion team historically, it doesn't have quite the same cachet maybe as some of the longer-standing teams. I think a lot of Jags fans will go to the Wembley game the week before. It's easy to get tickets. Yeah. And I suspect that the weight will be more Bills fans and Spurs. There'll be plenty of Jags fans, I'm sure.
Yeah, my recollection in 2015 when we were there, it was maybe 20% Jacksonville fans, 20% Bills fans, and the rest. We literally played a game because we had 90 minutes before it started. We came up from the field into the seating, and we were able, I think, between 3 or 4 of us to identify a jersey from every other NFL team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
People just attend because this is their only chance to see live football, right? And they'll usually pick a team with an allegiance. They'll say, right, well, I'd rather this team won than that team won. So I remember going to see the Jets Falcons recently, and of course, I was a Falcons fan that day, but with my Bills jersey on.
There you go. Right.
People just do it. Yeah.
See, it's allowed in London. I've said on this show before that, my time there, and I always find it to be a jersey foul if you're at an NFL game and you're wearing a jersey of a team that's not playing.
Right.
If it's a Bills Falcons game and you're in Buffalo and you're wearing a Cowboys jersey, like, you don't need to be there. Obviously, London's a little different. You want to rep your team. You want to rep, your thing. So that's allowed.
That was a sophisticated wear on his part, though.
absolutely. Yeah, and you were cheering for the Falcons.
Right.
Right. Yeah. No, I like that's solid. Like that's next level. That's next level fathom. That's great. So before we let you go here, Charlie, we always do something called the 2-minute warning, where we ask you kind of 10 rapid fire questions.
It's gonna be interesting, isn't it?
2 minutes or less, and we'll see how you do. I got a couple off the board that I want to ask you, but Don, you can go ahead.
Before you do that, before we hit record, you mentioned Kristen Kimmick. Do you know her from? How
do I know her? Right. So, funnily enough, Kristen used to work with one of the London Bills backers committee. Okay. And I actually ran into Kristen. I think it was for the first time in Detroit last year. Okay. So yeah, we hung out a little bit and at the tailgate because we have a mutual friend. And then actually, funnily enough, a picture that was taken of me and Kristen and a few others ended up on CBS. And I had friends in Toronto sending me pictures like, hey, isn't this you?
Oh, very cool.
Funny.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Yeah, she was a fun guest.
And you know what?
Too.
One other question. Where would you recommend people stay? If they're not doing like a tour, what's Airbnb? Like what's the easiest?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say you got two choices. I'd say really central. And if you want to know what central means in a massive city like London, look at the tube map. And look, there's a green loop that goes all the way around, or the district line or the circle line, or the zone 1 tube area. Anything in there is fine. It's safe. It's central. It's very quick to get around. If you're wondering how far distances are, if you look at the tube map within that zone 1, it's 2 minutes between stops normally on average, right? So to get from one place to another place, it's 2 minutes between stops. So that gives you a sense of how easy it is to get around. So the tube is the way to travel here in London because it's so big. It's two choices. That's one choice. The other choice is if you may find it's cheaper to stay outside of London, but near a major railway station, right? So you can get into London from outside in maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes. So you're not in the center of London, but it's much cheaper perhaps in terms of accommodation. So, then it's a question of, well, where do you want to be? Sure. But there is fast rail between the outer skirts and inside to London. It's got 5 major railway stations, which get you into the heart of the action very quickly. So we talk about Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso is in Richmond. That's on the outskirts. It's a 50-minute train ride from Richmond into central London. So it's super easy. So in terms of Airbnbs and hotels, you probably find it's slightly cheaper with hotels. But if there's a big group with you, I would go with Airbnb.
Interesting. I want to go to that QPR game. Man, I wish I was going now, not for the NFL game, but that sounds fantastic. I'd be all into 20,000 on a Saturday. It's usually like a Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. Oh man, yeah. I'd be stumbling back to wherever I came from. All right, Don, fire away.
Pint. Okay. Well, most interesting place to watch a Bills game for you?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's got to be the Fitzrovia Bell, our home pub in London. We love it there. They're a great host, and I can't think of anyone better. 3
people, dead or alive, you'd want to have dinner with.
One of them has to be Benny Hill.
Oh wow, 3 people, dead or alive. JFK. I would put JFK on my list. I think that'll be an interesting one. I would say Jimi Hendrix. And who else? That's a really good question. Really, really good. Jim Kelly.
There you go.
All right. You're entering an arena or a stadium. You're a big deal. Dry ice. What is your entrance song?
Oh man. Okay. So that's a really good one. So I'm a big Man City fan, and we have an anthem called Blue Moon. You may be familiar with the song Blue Moon, but that's a great anthem. I used to have a boxing hero of mine, a guy called Ricky Hatton.
I know him.
You remember Ricky Hatton? Yeah, he used to walk into with Blue Moon, and I'll go with that. That was a great intro to music.
What's the best concert you've ever attended?
I think it's going to be Pearl Jam. I saw Pearl Jam here in London, in the O2 Arena, which is sometimes known as the Millennium Dome. It's a big dome. It's a 22,000-seater stadium. They sometimes play NBA games there and tennis tournaments. But that was incredible. I'd been a Pearl Jam fan since I was a teenager, and to see them live in person, it was just phenomenal.
Okay. Good stuff. Yeah. So I don't know if this is a fair question. I don't know how often you've been to Buffalo or in America, but your favorite Buffalo restaurant and dish, or your Buffalo type of restaurant?
Well, I mean, the question is obvious, right? It's got to be wings, and I'm going to go with Gabriel's Gate.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with the Cajun dry rub.
There you go. Very solid. So, give me the team in the English Premier League that is most like the Buffalo Bills.
Oof. So you're looking at an organization that's been struggled for a while and now is on the way up. I would say Newcastle. That would be an interesting one. It's also a northern team. It's a one-team town, which often, most cities have multiple teams, and it's a hardcore fan base. There's no such thing as a part-time Newcastle fan. So I'll go with that.
Okay. Can you drive on the right side of the road?
I can, and I do regularly.
Interesting. Who do you find to be the most annoying fan base in the NFL? Is there a fan base that came to London for an international game that pissed everybody off?
Oh man, where do I start? I mean, I'm gonna say Patriots fans. There's a reason that the word masshole exists, and I find that there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it's they're still living in the past, right?
Sure.
Faded glory. Secondly, a lot of them seem to be super part-timers. They were Brady fans, but not really Patriots fans. Well, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything to me as a Bills fan. So I'm going to go with Patriots fans. I mean, Eagles fans have a terrible reputation in the US, but actually here, the ones I meet is perfectly nice. So
That's good.
Go with Patriots fans, yeah.
I'll give two more here.
Yeah.
Were you at the Man City game, that famous game when they came back and they won the Premier League title for the first time, and the crowd absolutely loses its shit?
Yeah. I was not, unfortunately. I was watching in a pub near to where I live. I do have a season ticket, but I only get to go infrequently. I'll be there on Sunday, this Sunday, to hopefully beat Chelsea and hopefully secure the Premier League. But I wasn't. I was in a pub, and actually, this is an interesting story. So, half the pub was Man United fans, half the pub was Man City fans. It was like a front and back of a pub. Ooh. And if you remember that game, Man United had won. The game was finished, and there was a few minutes left. All the Man United fans came into the end where the City fans are, and they're celebrating, and they won the Premier League. And then City scored 2 goals in whatever it was.
They scored 2 goals in the last 2 minutes. They had to win the game. And I'll send you a YouTube clip. I'll post it, actually. Yeah. The fans. All right, which would be a better day in your life, that day or if the Bills win the Super Bowl?
I'm going to say the Bills win the Super Bowl. Wow. That's never happened. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I mean,
that's an incredible video to watch.
Yeah, you got to show
it. It is. So, I've never seen a pub clear out quicker than that. United fans leaving.
That's
devastation. So you've mentioned songs here. Give us 5 seconds of whatever your favorite song is that you've had at a soccer game, ironic or not.
Oh man. I need. Is this a family show?
We can edit anything you want. So go right ahead.
Family show.
All right. So I'm going to give you the "We're Not Really Here" Man City song. So it goes, we're not really here. We're not really here. Just like the fans of the Invisible Man, we're not really here.
That's great. Okay, that's great. Thanks so much for your time. Could you tell people the name of your podcast? And
sure.
Obviously your Twitter handle, and then maybe where people are going to be able to find some more information about London as we go forward.
And your record prediction.
Okay, yeah, we'll do. So with Bills from Afar is the podcast, and we'll be talking about the London game throughout the off season. You should follow us on Twitter, which is Bills from Afar. You can also follow London Bills Backers. There's LDN Bills Backers. It'd be easy to find. It's got quite a following already, and all this stuff that's coming out around London is going to be there. I'd also advise you to follow UK Bills because they're also doing some events as well, partnering up with friends of Buffalo. What was your
what's your record prediction for this year?
So I think it's going to be 12-5.
Okay.
I feel pretty optimistic about it. Before the schedule was released, I was a little bit less, but I actually want to get the Jets early. I want to get Aaron Rodgers early up to Buffalo. I think that's slightly in our favor. I have a feeling that's going to blow up in their face, at least I hope so. So I think that's just tipped me over to 12-5. I think it's going to be a tough schedule, but this is a good football team.
Absolutely. We'd love to talk to you again as we get closer to the London game, maybe, a week or two before. And then honestly, I'd love to talk to you after the game and see the reaction of, people over in London to Bill's Mafia coming over.
Anytime you like.
Yes,
Charlie, thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Charlie. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Wow, Don, that was a great interview with Charlie, wasn't it?
Sir Charlie.
Yeah, he's Sir of West Seneca now. We'll give him that title. That was great. It was really helpful, and it actually made me want to go more to the game. I just told you I was kind of on the fence, and I'm probably not gonna be able to pull it off. But man, what a fun time! What a fun weekend that would be.
I meant to ask him how bad a call he thought it was against Nicole Roby Coleman.
Oh, you're still not over that. Man.
I'm not. That was a long flight home, and it was such a. I don't. When I think about, we've never really talked about this before. Like, what are the worst calls in history? I know you'd go. That's not a bad topic, is it? Against the Bills, Music City Miracle. Remember the '98?
Just give it to him. The New England Patriot pass interference.
Andre Reed, and they didn't give him. And Ben Coates. And the helmet. That game was the worst. This one for me is right in all of those. And part of it is because how hard you work, and then. Anyway, but Charlie was great. I meant to ask him also when we were there in 2015. The one thing we did as an organization was rented out the floor of the Tower of London.
Do you know how much that cost?
I can only imagine. I can't imagine.
$1 million?
Yeah, maybe.
Because it's like a historical landmark. Well,
that's what I wanted to ask him. Like, were they offended? Now, he's a Bills fan, I understand. It's not like it was graffiti or a mural or anything. It was just a light, but the light was so prominent on this 1,000-year-old historic building. Like, would we be offended if we don't even have a comparison in our countries,
like the Washington Monument?
If there was.
Although it wasn't the Tower of London is not exactly like, it wasn't a good thing, right?
Well, it has the crown jewel. It's got a lot of going on. Downstairs is like, you don't want to know the stuff.
Sure.
And then it's got the crown jewel. But then upstairs was just like, honestly, Josh, it was like a ballroom.
Okay.
But it had a little bit of a pub feeling to it. You could have been
interesting
somewhere in downtown Buffalo at an old building.
It was fun.
It was good.
What an amazing venue. Yeah, you know what? We're going to have him back on as the game gets closer, because I want him to go through all the events there and, what they're going to do when their schedules get finalized. So anybody who's listening to this, we'll have a better idea. Yeah. So we'll definitely ask him about the Tower of London then. For anybody who's just kind of hearing our show for one of the first times, Don and I have over 30 years of experience at One Bills Drive in the front office. And, we share some stories, memories, behind the scenes stuff when we're not interviewing guests.
We've both been fired.
And actually, that reminds me, we're only about 2 weeks away from
and not for anything, it's the nature of the NFL. They wiped out a whole.
Like I was told, what I was told when I got promoted to the football department, kid, you just got hired to get fired.
Yeah.
And we're about 2 weeks away from your anniversary show, where we're gonna relive that day for Don. Like back in our archives, I relived my day on February 9th. So Don's going to do his and maybe share some insights and some memories of that day. Sure. He's looking forward to that program. So we're just going to, kind of shoot the bull here for a few minutes. And I wanted to ask you, it's kind of a downtime, obviously OTAs, rookie OTAs, whatever. And what was the building like? People maybe will put the Bills out of their mind for a little while once, OTAs are over. I know Bills are never out of anybody's mind for long. But in the building, at One Bills Drive, how relaxed does it get, like summertime?
Summertime's nice. The league actually doesn't mandate it, but it recommends that every team take advantage of what they call summer hours for about 5 weeks. That hasn't started yet because the OTAs are still going on. Things are about 3/4 to half speed right now at One Bills Drive. They still have the players' off-season workouts where they're there for 4 hours a day. They're allowed to do some football drills. But, the big news over the weekend was they had a big tryout and they signed like 3 or 4 players, one former first-round pick. That's kind of big news for now. But it's funny when training camp starts, those guys are just going to be 3 or 4 of 90 competing for 53. But between that, the summer hours are the day starts at 8:30. Come in earlier if you want. and it closes at 3.
Monday through Friday?
Friday's noon.
Ooh.
So Monday through Thursday, I kind of followed them. I didn't leave right at 3, but on Friday I left at lunch and I never looked back. There was like 5 Friday afternoons in the summer to come home and mow the lawn and throw something on the grill.
Those are gold.
Really, really nice. Yeah.
Wow. Now the cafeteria is closed.
Closed.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So that's a bummer.
Yeah, the players get fed the protein,
sure,
downstairs,
sure,
but not the staff.
Okay, right? Wow, that's nice. I mean, 8:30 to 3 Monday through Thursday, and then so what's the vibe? Is it because you're in the NFL? Mm-hmm. The vibe during the season is pressure cooker every day, every week. Is it? How do you describe it? Is it like just a regular company? Does it feel like you're working for?
That's a good way to put it. It kind of does feel like you're working for a regular company, only because by comparison, the regular season is so not like a regular company. Long hours during the week, but then every weekend.
Yeah.
Except for a bye week, and if you play on a Thursday night, you might get the weekend too. But we're traveling, so you kind of feel like you deserve it for your own sanity and for family time, honestly.
Yeah. I remember I didn't know when I got promoted that I was going to get the entire month of June off. It was half of June, half July.
There you go.
And that was great. Like, I didn't know that. I wasn't made aware of that until like a week before. So here I am, I'm 23.
Yeah.
I've got money. I've got time, and I had no plans because I didn't know until of course, nobody told me. Like, nobody told me I had a week off, and I never thought to ask, hey, you get any time off before camp?
Well, it's funny. I knew that the coaching staff did, but I didn't want to tell you that in case they
didn't give it to me.
They didn't give it to you, and you know what I mean?
No,
I was so happy when you told me that they gave it to you too.
Yeah. That was one of the more pleasant surprises. Getting Super Bowl tickets was a very nice surprise that I ended up selling to a mysterious person in the locker room that I never met. I gave him 2 tickets and I got a paper bag back. And
shadowy figure.
It was a good trade. It was a good trade.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that because I wasn't paying attention when I was in the merchandise department. I wasn't paying attention to what the coaching staff was doing in June. So that was great. And then the first day back felt like the first day back to school.
Yeah.
It was like summer break's over.
How was your summer?
How was your summer? And at that point I had dropped quite a bit of weight. And I remember, God, I hadn't thought of this till right now. So it had been like a month since anybody, had seen each other. And at that point, I was down like 45, 50 pounds from my heaviest. And I walked into the locker room, and Joe Pendry, the offensive coordinator, he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, you look better." Not good. Not, "Hey, great job." He's like, "You look," and he hesitated. He goes, "Better," with like this disdain in his, just better, because he's the same one I told you before who chirped me when I started on Rusty Jones' miracle diet. He'd come by every day. "Oh, that's all that's on your plate there, fat boy? That's all you got today?" One of those old school coaches.
Didn't you say Woody gave you a hard time?
Oh, Woody always would give me a hard time.
Assistant equipment manager, famously.
About pant size, and it was a running joke. So that was like the only compliment I got. Some of the, like Debbie Driscoll, some of the secretaries, some of the people in the office. "Oh, you look great. Congratulations. Keep going. You're doing a great job." And Joe Pendry gave me, "You look better." Like it was like painful for him to say the word "better." Like he spit it out, and he was just one of those old school football coaches. He ended up going to Alabama, and he was the offensive coordinator under Nick Saban for offensive line coach. Just like chewing tobacco, Southern. Like when you talk about a Southern football coach, Joe Pendry was like. And I always remember him before the games. So there was a coach's locker room, and at home he would lay flat on his back in the middle, and that was a small room, if you remember. Okay, and there was like 10, 12 people getting dressed in there. He would lay flat on his back in the middle of the room with his play sheet, like reading it, but he would be in the middle of the room, and everybody would have to kind of walk around him. And it's funny because the staff had already been there, for a while before I was, allowed in, and it was just like. Matter of fact, like the first time he did it, I didn't know if he was having a heart attack. I didn't know what was happening. And it's like, this is like an hour before an NFL football game.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he just was going to take a nap, like right on the floor in the coach's locker room is not big.
See some strange, what do you call them? Pregame, whatever they are, superstitions.
He would do it for about 10 minutes, and he'd lay flat on his back and have the play sheet over his head. And I think he was reading it or he was meditating. I don't know what he was doing. Well, but it was just such a strange thing to do.
Clearly taking up a disproportionate amount of space for one person.
It was, and who am I to say? I certainly never said anything. I didn't want to step on him.
Right.
It was just kind of weird. Speaking of coaches and speaking of the, the off season and all that, we're going to spin the wheel of failed Bills coaches. For anybody who has not listened, Don was the director of football administration for almost 15 years. He was in charge of basically everything to do with the football department and the staff, making the coaches, the players, the trainers, the video guys, the scouts, their life easier. So we spin the wheel. These are not failed coaches. These are failed Bills coaches because in that time as director of football administration, the Bills made the playoffs exactly 0 times. Mm-hmm. So, Don, we have 2 entries for the wheel today before we let everybody go. The first one is kind of an easy one. We're going to go with Jerry Gray.
I just emailed him 2 days ago.
Okay.
He is with the Falcons. He came in with Greg Williams, I believe, as defensive coordinator. But he had more juice than that. And I don't know why, or for some reason.
Was he almost like an assistant head coach?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether or not that was his title or not, I can't recall. But I remember Greg Williams. And I was just starting to be part of council around the football department. And when a new coach came in, I was one of the first people they met because I handled the relocation. So I was kind of comfortable to them. And when something would come up with the head coach, I remember he would be like, yeah, let me run that by Jerry. And I forget who the offensive coordinator was at the time. I'm sure I can think of it. But I don't remember him saying, let me run that by whoever the offensive coordinator was. Like Jerry Gray he was like a coordinator plus.
Okay.
And I remember he was a sharp dresser, just a sharp, looking guy. Like he
never got a head coaching job, did he?
I don't think so.
No,
and when he left, I'm sure there's folks that were there that know more about this than I did, but it was a bitter parting. I don't know why.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question before that. Jerry Gray is also known as the guy who got beat by Andre Reed on the 4th and 5 in the greatest comeback in NFL history.
Well, that's funny that you say that. He was a safety for that Oilers team. When we hired Jerry Gray, we also hired Steve Jackson.
Yes.
To be the DB coach. So those 2 guys came in.
Yes.
So we just didn't talk about that game around them.
And
it was painful.
I remember the week before I got fired, I remember watching Greg Williams' introductory press conference, and he goes, okay, I won't bring up Music City Miracle if you guys don't bring up the greatest comeback, because he was on that Oilers staff as well.
Was he?
Yeah.
Greg was?
Greg was.
No kidding.
So I remember that very vividly, that it was like these 2 epic, games and most epic playoff games in NFL history, because obviously the Titans were the Oilers.
Exactly.
So it was kind of a trade-off.
That's funny.
So that leads me to a question.
That's how we knew Jerry and Steve then.
Yeah.
Okay,
in your time there, was there ever any interesting interactions like between like coordinator and head coach where the head coach favored the one coordinator, much more than the other, or if it was his side of the ball, did he treat that coordinator terribly? Do you have any recollection of that?
Generally, you could see it that a head coach, if he came from that side of the ball, would just seem to spend more time with the staff on that side of the ball. I don't remember really seeing it play out where you'll be like, man, that poor guy is just getting ignored. The one guy that was on an island that and I think he chose for it to be this way, it was Mike Pettin. He came in and he was a defense coordinator, and he was just, I remember the first time I met with him, he was like, all right, let's get this over with. What do I need to know? And he goes, I got to get to work. And it was like, January.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't brought him up, but he was pretty intense. But,
gotta work 80 hours a week in March, because that's going to make the difference.
Yeah.
I know.
So I don't recall like seeing something so contentious in that regard that it really stood out. But
well, then let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Who were the coordinators on the other side of the ball from the head coach that impressed you? Because they're almost they're head coaches of the offense.
Right.
So when Rex Ryan was there, I'm assuming he probably didn't have a whole lot to do with the offense.
No, he
Was there a coordinator or two that stand out as like, they really seem to handle that all well? Their staff, they're almost like a second head coach in a way of the offensive staff or the defensive staff, depending on who the coach is.
Yeah, I would say the one that I really thought was going to have a great future in the NFL as a head coach was Perry Fuel.
Okay.
Defense. He ended up being the interim coach for 3 games after Dick Duran left. And even though I think we went 1-2 in those 3 games and he didn't end up, getting the job at the Bills, I thought this is a guy who's going to be a head coach around the league. I think he was a defensive coordinator again. And now I believe he is head of NFL officiating.
Oh, is that a
I don't
is that a compliment?
I don't know. Yeah.
Is that a compliment? I don't know.
So you can look that up. He at least was as of the past few years. I don't know if he is this year, but
I don't know. I'll need to reserve judgment on whether to say, "Oh, that's a great, good for him."
Yeah, I'm not sure I would want that job.
I wouldn't want that job, and B, I don't know if they've they could use a little bit of tightening up, right?
Yep.
As a wow. Well, that's our show for today, everybody. Hopefully, people enjoyed that unique interview.
It was a jolly good show.
Jeez, you and your terrible British puns.
I didn't use an accent.
Benny Hill twice.
Benny Hill. Watch YouTube Benny Hill and try not to
Is it in
laugh.
black and white?
No, but it's in
sure?
just maybe some early stuff, but otherwise it maybe got grainy color. Oh, it's hilarious.
I mean, you're gonna pull up like Archie Bunker next week, or some real. I have Welcome to Wrexham, and I have Ted Lasso, and you're pulling up Benny Hill.
I love Ted Lasso too. I haven't seen Welcome to Wrexham. I need to say
it's
that.
Great.
But,
it's great.
We had quite the trilogy there of good British shows.
That's very fair. We're gonna try a new thing here where I remind everybody to like and subscribe. I've had to remind myself to do this because I've been terrible at it. So if you'd like our show, subscribe to our show. That's really helpful for the algorithm that Don and I are struggling to learn on YouTube. Thank you to all the Cover One guys for helping us there. We are going to be back on Sunday interviewing Tim Graham from The Athletic. I'm excited to talk to him about his career, his journey. Always, colorful, and he's a great Twitter follow because he doesn't take shit from anybody, which I enjoy. And then next week we're gonna get back into some player interviews, and we'll see everybody then.
Sounds great. Thanks.